I invite you to sit down sometime this holiday season and look back on 2025. Maybe it's with your spouse or even with your kids. Look back and say, what did we do? What did we accomplish? What were we able to achieve in this year? And you want to celebrate the progress that you made, both in the areas of process and with the outcomes that you've been able to achieve. Hi, I'm Chris LeBrun, your host of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. As someone who's never been afraid of dreaming big and going for it all, I often find myself with a lot on my plate. I'm a husband and father, a nonprofit fundraiser, and an entrepreneur. What I've realized is my view of productivity was pretty toxic. After decades of believing that in order to do more, you had to work harder, I began to see productivity as this beautiful thing. Holistic productivity is the idea that you can accomplish your professional, personal, and purpose-driven goals in a healthy way, and doing so will make you happier and more fulfilled. Join me each week as we break down myths about productivity, share practical tips for maximizing your time, energy, and focus, and hear from others about their productivity journey. This is the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. Hey, thank you so much for being here for episode number 40 of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. My name is Chris LeBrun. I'm a productivity coach. I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm just so glad that you are here for this episode. It's going to be a fun one this week. You know, we are right smack dab in the middle of the holidays, and it's the perfect time for a nice little light episode. And before we get into it, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. This is like your Christmas gift to me for you listening in or watching on YouTube, being here for this episode. I love nothing more. So just wanted to say thank you again for being here and for making this an important part of your day, your routine, your regular podcast listening rotation. I just appreciate that. But we're going to dive in. Like I said, nothing heavy in this episode. But with that said, I think this is an important episode as it demonstrates a very important part of the goal setting process. Today, I'm going to do a review of 2025. I'm going to look back at all of the things that I accomplished this year and recap some of the goals that I set. Now, part of this is accountability, and that is really important. I think it's important for me to be accountable to you guys. I talk about achieving goals, and I want to show that I'm actually doing that. Now, obviously, you don't have to do this as publicly be as transparent with your goals and accountability, but it's important for you just to go back through and review the progress here at the end of the year, even if it's just for yourself. But reviewing your progress at the end of the year does several things. First off, it lets you celebrate your progress. And you'll notice that I didn't say celebrate your success. Not everything you did this year was the completion of a goal. A lot of what happens is part of the journey. And it's important to acknowledge the progress that we make. Another reason to go back and look at what you did this past year was to identify any roadblocks that there were. Now, we're not trying to focus on the failure. You've probably already beat yourself up enough, but we're looking at what caused the failure. This will help us prevent the same thing from happening again, and that is really critical as we go forward. Another thing that this kind of year-end review can do is help you course correct. A lot can happen in a year, and goals can shift or morph. I'll talk about a couple of things that were not really on my radar before 2025 started, but I was able to accomplish anyways. So reviewing these can help you plan next year's goals, really help you dial in what you are trying to do. So, like I said, for this episode, I'm just going to go back and look at some of the goals that I had for the year and what ended up happening. Now, you're not going to hear me talk a lot about my professional goals. It's probably not something that my employer wants me to put out on the interwebs. My 9-to-5 job is in the nonprofit space, as a fundraiser. That's honestly where I've learned a lot about goal setting, and a lot of what I learned there is things that I bring to you here in this podcast. But I'll be honest, it was a challenging year for fundraising for nonprofits across the board, but I think especially here in the DC region, there's been so much turmoil in terms of jobs around federal workers, and a lot of people have lost their jobs or are uncertain with the shutdown and things like that. Not everything that we did this year was a success. I will say that, but there were several projects that were very successful, and I think we have a strong plan for next year. And that's really the important thing. So again, not spending a lot of time on that, but I would encourage you to look at your professional goals. Remember, this is not just one-sided. We're not trying to focus on one area of our life. We're trying to move all three areas forward: professional, personal, and purpose driven. So make sure when you do your review that you are looking at your professional goals and analyzing those. And I've certainly done that in my own life, but I'm just not going to talk about it here publicly. And I think you can understand and appreciate that. But I will talk about my personal goals. A lot of the personal goals that I had for 2025 were around running. I recently took up running as a hobby. Started that in the last part of 2024. And so I really set a lot of goals around what I wanted to do with running for 2025. I almost tripled the number of races that I was competing in. I would have done that if a couple of them weren't canceled. I'd signed up for a couple that got canceled. But my big goal for the year was training for the Army 10 miler. And I had a goal of running that in under 2 hours. For some of you that are runners, that might not sound like a big deal, but that was a huge step for where I was at the beginning of the year. It was a huge accomplishment for me to get under that 2 hours. And I was able to do it in spite of some injuries and things like that that happened right before the race started. So that one was a huge success. I was really glad for that. But it wasn't even just the completion time or achieving the race, crossing the finish line that I was really proud of. I had consistent training throughout the year to be able to make that possible, to be able to drive my mile time down like I did. I used Runna. That was the app that I used for training. I'll put a link in the show notes for that because I absolutely love it. And it was something that I was able to use consistently to train 3 days a week for the majority of the year. And I just really loved that I was able to keep that consistency. And trust me, it was not easy, getting up early and running before work and stuff like that. Another goal that I always have every year was travel. I love travel. One of those trips this year that we wanted to do was around my birthday in March. I had a big birthday this year, and I got to celebrate with family up in my hometown outside of Boston. Just able to eat pizza that I grew up eating as a kid and my favorite ice cream place there in New England. So that was a lot of fun. We got to have a family trip with my siblings. My parents have been asking forever to get all of the kids together. And it's really hard. I've got two brothers out on the West Coast. My sister is in North Carolina. I'm here in Maryland. My parents are in Florida. And we all live, full, busy lives. So, one of the things that my parents have said as they are getting older, that they really value that time with family. So we were able to get everybody together not that long ago, all the siblings, my parents, some of the grandkids were even there. So just a lot of fun to be able to do that, and not enough time for sure, but always fun to be able to do that. And we had another trip planned. We were supposed to go to Europe also to celebrate my birthday, but those plans got put on hold because my son had some health challenges. So obviously the big thing there is that he is doing better, and we can be grateful. I talk about gratitude. We can be grateful, even though he was sick, he was in the hospital. We had to cancel our plans for Europe. but there are so many things that we are grateful for. It wasn't worse. He didn't need surgery, on and on and on, the way that the doctors cared for him. So even though that was something that we missed out on in terms of a goal, still grateful. And look, we can understand why that happened, right? I can look and say it wasn't anything that that was in our control. It wasn't a failure on anybody's part. It was just something that, again, like I said, out of our control, that caused us to miss out on that goal. And we can go to Europe some other time. It's no big deal. Now, I had some miscellaneous goals as well in the personal space. Reading is always important for me. I was able to read 10 books this year, not a record by any stretch, but more than I read last year. And that is the goal. So I will shoot for more than 10 this year, maybe more than 11. I'm still hoping to squeeze one more in before the end of the year. And then this one sounds really silly and nerdy and goofy. I understand that. It wasn't really a goal that I knew that I had, but looking back, one of the exciting things for me was finding the software Capacities. I think I've talked about that before. I have a lot of information on a lot of different platforms, and Capacities is a digital note-taking app, and it allows me just to bring all of that information together in one place. This allowed me to create a personal knowledge management or PKM system that I just absolutely love. I'll put a link in the show notes for Capacities. I would highly recommend it if you are looking for any kind of digital note taking or personal knowledge management system. Capacities is fantastic. And then the last sort of miscellaneous goal was really around financial planning. Was able to do some work that I had wanted to do in retirement planning and investments and things like that. Was finally able to get some of that taken care of this year. And so really excited about that. Now, let's dive into the purpose goals. This was where there was a lot of growth and success during the year. At the end of 2024, I reorganized my company. So there were several goals around continuing that transition. We did a whole rebrand with a new name, and all of that meant a new website, social media, a mailing list. This stuff isn't big or sexy, exciting goals, but it was an important part of the process. And so was very excited when that got done very early on in 2025. Another big goal for the year was to launch this podcast. And here we are. I had a very strong launch. There was people who do podcasts, have done them a lot and professionally, and they saw some of the numbers around the launch of my podcast. And like, wow, Chris, that is really good. One of the things I was super excited about was having a sponsor before the first episode. And that was really exciting. Was able to add another sponsor partway through the year. And so that is exciting. Look, I acknowledge that I could probably have done more in this area, but it really wasn't a huge goal. I like having the sponsors. I will try to get more in the future, but I'm not doing this to make money. So it really wasn't the highest priority. But I do like finding people and businesses that are really aligned with what I believe in and what this show is all about. And so I love bringing those to you, and you can hear those spots throughout the podcast. Another cool thing that I'm excited about is that we have listeners in 35 countries on all 6 of the inhabited continents. Now, I am such a completionist. I need somebody to go to Antarctica and listen to the podcast there so that I can log that on my stats and have all 7 continents. But this was one of the goals that I had for this show, that it was not going to be just something that I did and nobody really listened to. To have people all around the world listening to this is fantastic. It's a huge thing for me, and we want to continue growing the listenership in some of these countries around the world. I've also been able to have great guests come on the show and tell their story about their goal journey. This was never something that was supposed to be just about me telling my story or telling you how to do productivity. I want to do that. I want to make room for that, but I want to hear great stories. And we've got a lot more on tap for that. I've already recorded some that we're just waiting to get out there, have more lined up. So I've really been excited about how that has gone for the success of the podcast this year. Another huge goal for 2025 was to redesign my planner, the Holistic Productivity Planner. I didn't need a major overhaul, just some minor tweaks based on feedback from a beta test that I did a few years ago. Look, this is where everything started for me with the planner. I was looking for something that fit my whole life, not just my professional life. And when I didn't find that, I started creating my own. Funny story on that. I created it in Excel because I'm not really a designer. So we've come a long way from those days of, blocky Excel pages. And now with this redesign, should be getting press proofs any day for what that's going to look like. And this is with all the bells and whistles, everything that I had envisioned this planner to be. So I'm super excited about getting those press proofs designed. Also was able to work on a digital version for the Good Notes app. So that was a huge thing to be able to do. And we'll have that coming out in 2026 as well. So very excited about that. Another thing I was able to start this year was my one-to-one coaching program. That has always been a goal of mine. Still very limited numbers in terms of how many people I can work with, because like I said, I am still working full-time. But it was just great to see the growth in my clients that they are having, both in their output, but also in their mindset around productivity and how they can do a better job with that. So very exciting to see that. Working on developing a couple of online courses, and we're very close to this. You'll start hearing about that very, very soon. This is a huge goal, so I can really go deeper with more people or people who aren't ready to have that full coaching experience. So very exciting about that. There were also several things that came up this year that were not on my radar, that were not part of the goals for 2025. One of those was being published in a national lifestyle magazine. It's called Vibrant Life. I have one of the feature articles, I think, in their January issue. It's on goal setting for the new year. So I'll put a link in the show notes when the online version of that drops. But that has already led to other conversations about future articles with Vibrant Life. And I'm looking at other publications as well, really trying to explore this idea of getting in magazines and newspapers and growing that side of the outreach, really to, again, bring more people into awareness about holistic productivity and how it can help them. The other exciting development this year was our community on School. And I was looking for a platform to host my online courses, but nothing felt right until I found School. And that's because they combine the courses and the community all into one. I've taken online courses before, and they have a platform here where the course is delivered. And then, they have another platform, usually Facebook, where there's more of that community engagement that's happening. But School really has all of that in one place. And I can do coaching there as well. It's connected me with great people in my own community, but also in other communities as well. We had a challenge in November focused on gratitude, and we have more challenges planned for the future. But I just love what's happening in School. And again, people from all over the world are joining in there as well. So check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes for that. When I look back on 2025, I am just so very pleased with what I was able to accomplish. I definitely learned some things along the way, and there's obviously room for growth in terms of process. But in terms of the outcome, I'm just really happy about where some of these goals ended up. And I'm happy about the processes too. I've talked about that in previous episodes. It's not enough that you have the outcome. It's how did the process happen? How did you get to that outcome? And I was able to move a lot of goals forward, and that is always, always a good thing. So what does it look like for 2026? Well, in my professional goals, again, I've outlined several big goals for the year, both in terms of funding goals of things that we want to raise, but also projects that I want to complete in how we do that. And again, we'll see how the economy helps or hinders those goals, but I have definitely gone through the process in that professional area of life to set some pretty big goals for next year. My personal goals for 2026, again, running is a huge thing. I have registered for my first half marathon in May. So I'm excited about that. I'll set a goal for my time as soon as I get into the training pretty much for that. And I'm also deciding which half marathon to run in the fall as well. So definitely want to get two of those. I've set a goal for my 10K time. I really want to bring that down. And I've started getting into trail running. So I want to do more of that. And I have two big trail runs planned. I'll have some others that I add in as well. One is in February. This is a 9-hour endurance race that I am totally not ready for, but I'm going to do it anyways just to see what I can do in 9 hours. Again, I don't plan on necessarily running that whole time. The elevation is pretty steep on that. I've gone out and previewed the course, but again, dream big. I'm going to dream big and do a 9-hour endurance race in February in Maryland. Again, it's crazy. The other one is the Ragnar Team Relay in August. And if you're not familiar with the Ragnar Team Relay, 8 people on a team, they each run 3 loops kind of in rotating order. So at the end of the day, or days, because it will go over a couple of days, each one of us will run about 15 miles across 3 loops. So as a team, we'll end up running 120 miles total. Again, totally insane. Super excited to do it though, and just really get out there. And I love the outdoors. I love the woods. And so now that I'm a runner, trail running seems like the obvious thing. And I'm just diving all in 2026 with the endurance race, with the Ragnar relay. So let's see how that works out. I can't wait to report how that goes. Also want to get back to international travel in 2026, possibly with a trip to Italy. And so that is something that is on the radar for our family. And we're having another big family reunion, this time not just the kids and my parents, it's all of the kids, the grandkids, the great grandkids. I think there's even some great great grandkids that are coming from my parents. So again, really excited to have that happen in 2026. Now, on to purpose goals. Let's get on to the purpose goals for 2026. This is really what you can expect from holistic productivity. A lot of these things center around the resources that I want to bring for you to be able to do more with reaching your goals. One of the biggest ones, again, is launching the planner. This has been a huge goal forever, and I'm excited to see this happen. You should be hearing about that very, very soon. Like I said, I'm getting the press proofs in just a matter of days. So it'll be very soon when we start launching that for sale. Launching online courses is another big goal for mine and something you'll see very soon in the beginning of the year. Podcast goals, like I said, I want to increase listenership, maybe get that listen from Antarctica so I can say all 7 continents. But I also want to bring more incredible guests to the program. I continue to have interviews with people who are telling their story, but I would love to bring just some really, the titans of productivity world and let you hear from some of those. Now, you can see that I am not talking yet about some of the measurable aspects of the goals. And if you've listened before, you know that I talk about how important that is. But the first step is setting an intention for these goals. Then you can come back and build out an entire goal roadmap for each one of these. You can identify what success looks like, create milestones and action plans, all the stuff that we talk about when we talk about creating goal roadmaps. Obviously, that is a lot more to talk about in this short of a setting or format. but it's an important part of the system. And then follow up with some sort of system like the Holistic Productivity Planner to stay on track with your goals throughout the year. I invite you to sit down sometime this holiday season and look back on 2025. Maybe it's with your spouse or even with your kids. Look back and say, what did we do? What did we accomplish? What were we able to achieve in this year? And you want to celebrate the progress that you made, both in the areas of process and with the outcomes that you've been able to achieve. Identify the roadblocks that held you back, the things that kept you from maybe achieving goals or achieving them to the level that you would like to. Figure out how you can course correct as you head into 2026, whether that's overcoming those roadblocks or just changing up your goals and modifying them a little bit based on the results that you saw in 2025. When you're able to do that, to have that moment of reflection, again, there's that level of accountability, but it's also something that you can just take and learn from and grow from, and it will have huge rewards as you go into 2026. Well, that's it. That is the show today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this journey down memory lane of 2025 in looking at the goals that I've been able to achieve. And I want to thank you for being a huge part of that. If you weren't watching this show on YouTube or listening to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, I would not be able to be where I am. So thank you for that. Thank you for supporting holistic productivity and being a part of this journey that I am on to just help you achieve your goals. Now, you can check out the show notes, holisticproductivity.com/40. Make sure you check that out. Again, I'll put some of the links in there that we've talked about today. Make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. You are definitely going to want to listen to the next episode or watch it on YouTube. I've got an exciting guest. I'm not going to tell you who yet, but I am so excited. This is somebody who is also in the productivity space and probably somebody that you have heard about before. It's a huge name out there. And so I'm just thrilled to be able to bring them to you, and you can learn from them as well. Like I said, don't want to miss it. So subscribe, like, favorite, follow, all of those things on your favorite podcast platform. Now, if you are enjoying this show, would love to see you rate it 5 stars. Again, it is the holiday season. This would be a perfect gift to give, not just to me, but to other listeners who are out there who are looking for great content. And you just give it 5 stars and say, hey, I really love this show. Tell them why. That would be awesome too. And that will bring more people to the show. And I would love that. Absolutely be one of the best Christmas gifts you could get. Also, follow at Holistic Productivity on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Substack, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of them there. Great productivity tips throughout the week, motivation, tips and tricks, like I said. All of that is the reason to follow on social media. And join the Holistic Productivity group on School. Like I said, it's a fantastic platform, and we are building a community there that is focused on helping each other be more productive in every area of life. Like I said, we've got challenges that we do from time to time that will just help you really identify what it is you need to focus on. I would say join School, join the community there. A lot of great resources for you, and it's absolutely free. So make sure you check that out. Again, thank you so much for listening in. I really do appreciate it. As always, my goal with doing this podcast is to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. And I'm so excited to see you doing this in 2025 and hope to see you doing it on into 2026 as well. We'll see you next time. Take care.